road holds a story. Welcome to the Shroyer Road Podcast, where we look into the stories behind the songs.
There are moments in history that appear small when they happen. A conversation in a garden, a decision made at a kitchen table, a suitcase packed before sunrise, a young couple standing before a minister with only a few witnesses present. At the time, no one knows whether those moments will matter. No one knows whether a choice made today will echo across generations. But sometimes the quietest decisions become the foundation of the greatest stories. Today, I want to share one of those stories. It is the story behind the song "We Married" by Shroyer Road, and told in the frontier legacy rooted in distant soil. The journey of Margaret Challenor and Charles Lasby. Their story begins in Staffordshire, England, in the early 1800s. It begins not with a grand battle, a famous invention, or a wealthy family building an empire. It begins in a garden. A gardener, a young woman searching for meaning, and two people who discovered that love is not simply a feeling. Love is a decision, a commitment, a willingness to step into an uncertain future together. The opening pages of Rooted in Distant Soil introduce us to Charles Lasby, working quietly in the gardens of Challenor Hall. He's not a man of wealth or social position. He is a man who understands patience, growth, and the importance of planting things that may benefit people he will never meet. The story describes him pressing an apple sapling into the earth, knowing that the tree he planted might someday provide shade to children he would never know. That image is one of the most important themes of this entire story. A seed, a tree, a future. Because that is what legacy really is. Legacy is not only what we leave behind, it is what we begin. When Margaret Challenor first notices Charles, she comes from a completely different world. She's the daughter of an estate owner. She has an education, opportunity, and social standing, but she also carries a hunger for knowledge and purpose. Margaret is not satisfied by being told what her life should be. She studies science, she reads medical texts, she explores questions about the natural world. The book describes her as someone who studied anatomy, botany, and emergent sciences, searching for a deeper understanding of life itself. And perhaps that is one reason she was drawn to Charles, because Charles also understood something about life that could not be learned only from books. He understood growth, he understood patience, and he understood that living things cannot be forced. They must be nurtured. One of the most beautiful moments in their early relationship happens while Charles is grafting a damaged apple tree. Margaret watches him carefully and asks why he speaks about plants as if they were patients. Charles answers, "They are, only quieter." That simple statement reveals so much about him. He saw life where others might only see objects. And perhaps Margaret recognized something she had been searching for, the connection between knowledge and compassion, between science and wonder, between understanding how something works and appreciating why it matters. The song "We Married" captures this beginning with the image of the garden. The lyrics begin. In the garden's edge at morning light, she spoke of roses sharp and bright. He trimmed the hedge, she watched him grow, two hearts entwined, though none could know. The garden is more than a setting. It represents a place where two worlds meet. Margaret comes from a world of privilege, education, and expectation. Charles comes from a world of work, craftsmanship, and humility. Yet the garden becomes a place where those differences matter less than what they share. They both see beauty. They both seek knowledge. They both believe that something greater can be cultivated. And this is where their story becomes relevant to us today, because every generation faces moments when the familiar begins to change. Every generation has moments when the path ahead is unclear. We may not face the exact struggles Margaret and Charles faced, but the human questions remain the same. What do we do when the future does not look like the past? What do we do when the life expected of us conflicts with the life we believe we are called to build? What do we do when following our convictions requires great courage? For Margaret and Charles, that moment came when they decided to marry. Their love crossed boundaries that society considered permanent. When you were born, in their world, social class determined almost every part of life. Where you were born shaped what opportunities you had. Family expectations carried enormous weight. A person was often expected to remain within the boundaries assigned at birth. But Margaret and Charles believed something different. They believed a person's worth was not determined only by status. They believed character mattered, commitment mattered, love mattered. When Charles approached Margaret's father, Joseph Challenor, he knew what he was risking. He asked properly, he showed respect, but the answer was not acceptance, it was rejection. Joseph did not see Charles as his future son-in-law. He saw him only as a gardener. The consequence was immediate. Charles lost his position at Challenor Hall. He was told to collect his tools and leave. For many people, that would have been the end of the story. A door closed, a dream lost, a reason to give up. But Charles did not see it that way. When Margaret found him afterwards, she asked if it was over. His answer was, "No, it's begun." That moment is one of the central messages of this story. Sometimes what looks like an ending is actually an invitation to a new beginning. This idea is especially important today. We live in a time when many people feel uncertain. Industries are changing. Communities are changing. Technology is transforming how we work and communicate. Many people feel that the world they knew is disappearing. And when change arrives, our first instinct is often fear. We look backward. We wonder what we're losing. We focus on what's ending. But the story of Margaret and Charles asks us a different question. Change is not always an end of something. It can be a beginning of something new. Margaret and Charles did not know what awaited them. They did not know they would eventually cross an ocean. They did not know future generations would tell their story. They did not know that their descendants would look back and see their courage as the beginning of a legacy. They only knew they had chosen each other. And sometimes that is where every great journey begins. Not with certainty, with courage. The title phrase of the song says, "We married, whether or no." Those words carry the feeling of determination. They mean we chose this path. We accepted the consequences. We understood the road would not be easy, but we believed the journey was worth taking. That message is timeless because every person eventually reaches a moment where they must decide whether to remain where they are comfortable or step into something greater. Sometimes that choice involves a career. Sometimes it involves moving to a new place. Sometimes it involves rebuilding after a loss. Sometimes it involves following a dream that others do not understand. Margaret and Charles remind us that courage does not mean we have no fear. Courage means we move forward even when we do. And their story did not end with their wedding. In many ways, it was only the beginning, because after choosing each other, they faced the next great question. How do two people build a future when they have left behind everything familiar? That is where the next chapter of their story begins. A life built not on inheritance, but on perseverance. A future built not on what they were given, but on what they created.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Shroyer Road Podcast, Stories Behind the Music. The story behind the song We Married continues in my newly released paperback, Rooted in Distant Soil, The Frontier Legacy. One quick note. The historical illustrations shown during this podcast come from the full-color hardback edition of the book. The paperback is a more affordable edition and does not include those color images. There will be more episodes of the Shroyer Road Podcast, Stories Behind the Music, where we explore the family stories, history, and meaning behind songs of Shroyer Road. Please subscribe so you'll be notified when the next episode is released. And if you enjoy this episode, please give it a like. It helps more listeners discover the podcast. Until next time, thank you for listening and keep bringing the stories of the past into the light.